and welcome to another episode. In today's episode, I am going to be explaining what a query selector is and how you can use it in JavaScript. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. That really helps me out. And if you want to get notified every time that I upload a new video, you can hit that ring bell. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, everybody, so to get started in today's episode, I need you to open the same website that we have been working so far, which is this one, and I also have the code for it ready in here. And I also need you to open MDN. And by the way, in MDN, you're going to type in the search box, just query selector, just like this. You type in query selector all together, and you're going to have a first article. So just click on it, okay? So first and foremost, let's clear out, because today's episode is going to be very short. Let's clear out what is query selector. I gave you this as a homework in our previous episodes, so I hope that you have already dig deeper into what a query selector is and how you can use it. But in today's episode, I just want to teach you how to use it, because we are now going to be using query selector rather than document.getElement by ID. Okay, so here, let's read a little bit first so that you understand what a query selector is. So the document method, okay, the document method query selector, which is a method, of course, right, returns the first element within the document that matches the specified selector or group of selectors. If there are no matches in the documents, then null is returned, right? So in other words, it's a selector. A query selector is a selector. You're going to be using this like you use document.getElement by ID. But the cool thing about it is that it doesn't have to be necessarily an ID. It doesn't have to be necessarily a class. I mean, you can pick anything with query selector as long as it has kind of like a syntax of what we use in CSS. So I will, explain that in just a bit. Now, what's the syntax of query selector? It's very easy. You just use query selector, and then in parentheses, you go ahead and you place the selector that you're going to be using. Now, there are a couple of parameters and there are a couple of exceptions. If you want to go ahead and just take a look at, special characters and those things that are not included, I encourage you to read this article a little bit more. But I'm not going to go through them. I'll just leave you that as a homework right now so that you can go ahead and actually play around with this. I'll give you just 2 examples today so that you can see what this is. Now, another thing that I do want to explain is what is querySelectorAll. Because with query selector, as you know, you can it returns the first element, right, that you select. Now, on querySelectorAll, this method, it returns a static, not a live, node list, representing a list of the document's elements that match the specified group of selectors. So in other words, query selectors, we can say that we can use it for, let's say, IDs, or something that is just that it'll just match something unique in your website, right? And then query selector all will be maybe like for classes, right? There's a whole bunch of them, and let's say that you want to do certain things to all of them, and you don't want to pick them, just like one by one. Then you will select query selector all. That's why it says all, because we are selecting all the elements in the document, right? In order to make sure that we make changes to all of them at once, right? So hope that makes sense. Now, without further ado, let's just make sure to explain you this into our code. So going back to our code, first, let me just delete all of this. That way we don't get, confused. Let's save this out. Refresh this. Okay, perfect. And now I am going to go back again into my code, and in the index, let's make a couple of changes here to our index. Let's see. Let's leave the title as it is. And then in the body section, let's just leave the H1 as my H1. I'm going to leave just that H1. Now, I want to paragraph. I don't want all of this anymore. So let me just delete all the buttons and everything that we have written in here. And what I want to do is place 2 paragraphs, just to show you how query selector and query selector all works. So paragraph, they will have not an ID, because an ID it has to be unique. So we're going to make this a class. Okay. So we're going to make this a class. Okay. So hello, I'm a paragraph 2. Let's just put to this thing right here. Okay, so we have an H1 with the ID of my H1, and then we have 2 classes. My class, which is my paragraph right here, and then another class named as well my paragraph, and they both have different text inside. So let's just save this information, going back to our code, hit refresh. There you go. So we only have one H1 and then 2 paragraphs right there. Okay, so let me show you how this query selector will work here. First thing we're going to do is add, as you probably already know, a variable. So let's just add a variable, and we're going to call this variable heading. Okay, now this is going to equal to document dot query selector instead of get document by ID. So query selector, just query selector. And then I am going to open parentheses, and let me just go ahead and make sure I select the ID, which is my H1 right here. Okay. And please pay close attention to this. I am not using my ID anymore, just the word. I am using right now a hashtag, right? Because this is what we use in CSS typically. That's why I said, it's typically kind of like CSS selectors. We use a hashtag when we're selecting IDs. So just make sure that you do that, okay? So we're selecting our first H1 here, okay? So we're selecting that. Now, we can see that if we just go ahead and type something like console.log, and then let's do heading, heading text content, which, as you know, text content is a property that is going to display the content of the H1, which in this case will be JavaScript demo. But we are going to use console.log just so that you can see that we have properly selected this ID. So let me just go ahead and hit save here. Now we are going to open the console. So inspect and then console. And now I'm going to hit refresh. Let's make sure I hit save. There you go. Now let's hit refresh. And boom, see here it says JavaScript demo because it's console.logging the heading text content, which is this portion right here. So as you saw, just like that, you're selecting an ID. We're not doing this anymore by document get element by ID. Now we're using a query selector, and we just simply specify that is the ID of my H1. Just make sure, again, to include quotes and to include the hashtag in there, okay? Okay, so now let's use querySelectorAll. Here we have 2 paragraphs. And in fact, you know what? Let's just do 3 of them instead of 2. Just so, or 4. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I'm a paragraph 2, I'm a paragraph 3, and then let's just put here I'm a paragraph 4. I'm going to hit save. So you see, just so you can see how cool this works. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. And I want to select all of them at once, just with one piece of code, not writing, hey, document get element by ID and then changing the IDs in all of them. No, we don't want to do that. We want to select all of them at once. So to do that is very simple. We are going to add another variable. We're going to call this variable paragraphs. Okay. And now this variable called paragraphs, we're going to select document.querySelectorAll. In this case, right? Because we want to select all of them. And then in here, we are going to select, let me just make sure here that I type this correctly. So it's called my paragraph, the ID for every single one of them. So I'm going to copy this. And as you can see, I'm using the dot, right? This is the dot operator to select all classes, right? Remember, if you remember CSS, in CSS, we use hashtag for IDs, and then we use a little dot when we want to select all classes. So it's the same thing here for query selectors. Okay, everybody, so let's go ahead and let's do the following. Now that we have selected all paragraphs, what we want to do is type in some sort of code here so that we can see all paragraph contents displayed in here. We have selected already the paragraphs in this variable, right? So now we're going to use that variable. Now, the way that I am going to be using this variable is going to be the following. Let's do paragraphs, which is the name of the variable. So paragraphs dot for each, okay, for each, and then we open parentheses in here, and then inside of this parentheses, we're going to say for each paragraph, for each paragraph. We're going to the equal or greater than. For each paragraph, equal or greater than, then let's display console.log paragraph dot text content, just like that. Okay, let's do that. So this is a for each, right? So paragraph, so the variable paragraph dot for each, right? For each, and then inside of this for each, we're going to say for each paragraph, and this is referring to all paragraph or all p tags right here, right? That it's equal or major than, then console.log, paragraph.text content. So this should display all text content if we have selected properly all paragraphs with the class of my paragraph right there. Okay, so let me just go ahead and let's hit here save. Just close this out. Okay, and let's hit save. Now going back to our code, let's hit refresh. Whoops. Okay, everybody, let's see what was the error. I probably typed something, or I probably misspelled something in here. So let's see. It says that there is an error in here. Okay, so we're missing the letter A in there. So let's just make sure that we add A in here. Paragraph. Okay. Now let's make sure also I do the following in here. Paragraph. Okay, so that should fix it. Let's save this out. Going back to our console. Let's hit refresh and boom, there you go. So just make sure, right, that you're typing everything correctly, because you need to type in the right keywords. Now here, we're typing the keyword paragraph to make sure that this addresses all paragraphs in the document, right? So just like that, you have created right now 4 paragraphs, and you have displayed all of them in the console by selecting them using querySelectorAll, right? So you can see all text content for each paragraph in here. So that's exactly how you will use querySelector and then querySelectorAll. You don't want to type in a single line of code, because just imagine if I didn't use querySelectorAll, I'll be like using IDs to use document that got element by ID, and I'll have to display or give different type of IDs to do this that I just did right now, right? So just make sure that you understand how query selectors work. Go ahead and play around with them. Read MDN, read the documentation, because there are a couple of parameters, there are a couple of rules that you need to understand. And again, you know, we cannot cover all of them in the course. So this is your job to study this and make sure that you learn what are those specific, let's say, exceptions that you will find, and those specific things that you cannot do and that you can do using these 2 methods. Okay, so that was it for today's episode, everybody. I hope that you liked it. I hope that you learned a lot today. Remember, if you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. It only costs you 1 click, and it helps me out a lot. And if you want to receive notifications every time that I upload a new video, you can hit the ring bell, and then you will get notified every time I do so. Okay? Okay, everybody. And also remember that you can always ask Lixi. Bye, everyone, and see you again in the next episode.